Welcome to the Quiz Fix. I'm Cyril, and joining me as always is Olivia. Each week we dig into one real story from history, science or culture, and we close every episode with a quiz to make sure it sticks. Let's get into it. If you want one event that basically launched modern UFO culture into the stratosphere, Roswell is the obvious contender.
Absolutely. And the tricky part is that Roswell is both famous and misunderstood. People say the government admitted it was a UFO, which is not quite right.
Right. What happened in July 1947 was a mix of a real military incident, sensational press coverage, later corrections, and decades of public distrust. That combination is rocket fuel for a legend.
So let's set the scene. In early July 1947, debris was found on a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico, by rancher William Mack Brazel. He collected some of it and later reported it to authorities.
And the key local military base was Roswell Army Airfield, or RAAF. On July 8, 1947, the base issued a press release saying the 509th Bomb Group had recovered a flying disc.
That's the headline that echoed around the world. This was just weeks after flying saucers became a national craze, so the timing was perfect for a sensation.
Because only about 3 weeks earlier, pilot Kenneth Arnold had reported seeing unusual objects near Mount Rainier in Washington. The press turned that into the term flying saucer, even though Arnold described their motion more than their shape.
So by the time Roswell hits the news, Americans are already primed to think about mysterious objects in the sky. Then the Army says it found a flying disc. That is not subtle.
Not subtle at all. But almost immediately, the story changes. The Army says the debris was from a weather balloon, and later that explanation is expanded to include a radar reflector.
And that correction matters. If the public hears flying disc first and weather balloon second, a lot of people start wondering whether the military is covering something up.
Especially because 1947 was the beginning of the Cold War atmosphere. People were already nervous about secrecy, nuclear weapons, and strange military technology.
Exactly. But we should also be precise. The debris from the Roswell incident is widely understood by historians and the US government to have been from Project Mogul, a classified program using high-altitude balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests.
That's the modern consensus. Project Mogul is the explanation most often cited by researchers who have looked into the event in detail.
Still, the Roswell story didn't become the giant UFO legend overnight. For years, it was relatively obscure compared with later UFO cases.
That's one of the most interesting parts. Roswell is huge now, but in the late 1940s and 1950s, it wasn't the single towering myth it is today. It grew over time as UFO culture itself grew.
And it grew because people love a mystery with a twist. First the Army says disc, then balloon. That's irresistible to believers and skeptics alike.
Let's back up for a second. The original press release came from Public Information Officer Walter Haut, based on what local base commander Colonel William Blanchard had told him. The Army likely wanted to correct or clarify quickly once officials realized the debris was not what the public had assumed.
And the corrected explanation was pretty mundane. Torn rubber, foil, sticks, and paper. Not exactly cinematic.
Not cinematic, but very plausible for a balloon train with attached instruments. And that mundanity is part of why the case remains so contested in popular culture. People expect something more dramatic.
Then, decades later, the mythology really takes off. In the 1970s and 1980s, UFO researchers began interviewing witnesses and publishing books that reframed Roswell as a crash of an extraterrestrial craft.
Right, and those later accounts introduced claims about bodies, wreckage recovery, and government secrecy. Those ideas were not part of the original 1947 newspaper frenzy in the way people often assume.
That's a crucial distinction. The later narrative is much richer and more dramatic than the initial reports. That doesn't make it true, but it does explain why the story became so powerful.
And once a story enters the culture, it starts feeding on itself. Books, documentaries, magazine covers, TV specials, and movies all kept Roswell in the public imagination.
At that point, Roswell is no longer just an incident. It becomes a symbol of government secrecy, of possible contact with non-human intelligence, and of the idea that official explanations might never tell the whole story.
Which is why Roswell is often called the birthplace of UFO culture, even though the phenomenon of unexplained aerial sightings existed before 1947.
Exactly. People have reported strange lights in the sky for centuries. What changes after World War II is the modern framing, the idea of extraterrestrial visitors, flying saucers, and a government that may know more than it says.
And Roswell lands right at the center of that cultural shift. It gives the new flying saucer era a foundational case, something people can point to and argue over.
Let's talk about the famous 1994 and 1997 government reviews, because those really helped shape public understanding. The US Air Force issued reports concluding that the Roswell debris was from Project Mogul.
Those reports also addressed the rumors of bodies by suggesting that later stories may have been influenced by memories of human crash test dummies used in high-altitude experiments years later.
That part is often controversial in popular accounts. But the Air Force's basic position was clear. Roswell was not an alien spacecraft crash.
And yet, many people didn't find the reports persuasive, partly because by then, Roswell had become a cultural trust issue, not just a factual one.
Exactly. Once a story becomes a symbol of secrecy, evidence alone may not settle it for everyone. People ask, why did the army say flying disc in the first place? And why did the story change?
Fair questions. The answer likely lies in haste, misunderstanding, and the unusual nature of the debris. But from a public relations standpoint, the initial wording was a disaster.
A textbook example of how one clumsy press release can echo for generations.
And it helped create the modern UFO ecosystem. Eyewitness accounts, government cover-up theories, researchers, conventions, merchandise, even tourism.
Roswell, New Mexico embraced that legacy. The city now hosts museums and annual events that draw visitors interested in UFO history and pop culture.
Which is fascinating, because the incident became both a historical claim and an economic identity.
There's also the media angle. The Roswell story spread through newspapers in a very different way than it would today. In 1947, the Associated Press and other outlets could amplify a short story very quickly. But there was no internet for instant fact-checking or viral myth-making.
Instead, you got a burst of headlines, then a correction, then years of people remembering the exciting first version more vividly than the correction.
That's human nature, honestly. The weird version sticks.
And the weird version is more emotionally satisfying. A weather balloon is just a weather balloon. An alien craft? That's a whole civilization of questions.
Roswell also matters because it shows how a government explanation can backfire when secrecy is already in the air. Project Mogul was classified, so officials couldn't fully explain what they were doing without revealing sensitive information.
which meant the truth, or at least the plausible truth, could not be fully shared at the time. That vacuum gave speculation room to grow.
And speculations multiplied. Some people claimed there were bodies. Some said the debris had exotic materials. Some alleged intimidation of witnesses. Many of those claims emerged much later and are difficult to verify.
That's important to say plainly. Later testimony can be sincere, but memory is not a perfect recording device. People can be influenced by books, interviews, and popular expectations.
Exactly. Historians treat the earliest contemporaneous sources differently from recollections many years later. The 1947 documents are much closer to the event than stories told decades afterward.
Still, you can see why Roswell remains sticky. It has all the ingredients: a rural location, a mysterious object, military involvement, an initial dramatic claim, a quick reversal, and long-term secrecy concerns.
It's practically engineered for legend status.
And that legend became part of a larger American fascination with the skies after World War II. Jet aircraft, rockets, nuclear power, and the dawn of the space age all made people feel the sky had new possibilities and new dangers.
So Roswell isn't just about aliens. It's about mid-century America. Science, fear, secrecy, media, and imagination all colliding over the desert.
Nice line. And I think that's why the story endures. Even if the most likely explanation is terrestrial and classified, the cultural meaning is still huge.
Right. The factual answer and the cultural impact are two different things. Factually, the best evidence points to a Project Mogul balloon train. Culturally, Roswell helped define how Americans talk about UFOs, cover-ups, and extraterrestrial possibility.
And that culture didn't stay in 1947. It shaped everything from the X-Files to endless alien documentaries to the modern habit of treating unexplained sightings as potential government secrets.
Even the word UFO itself evolved. Today, people often say UAP or unidentified anomalous phenomenon in official contexts. But Roswell remains the old-school giant in the room.
Because it's memorable and because it gave people a story they could retell in one sentence. The army said it had a flying disc, then changed its mind.
That sentence is why Roswell lives forever, even though the full historical record is more complicated.
So if we boil it down, the 1947 Roswell incident was not the discovery of proven alien technology, but it was the spark that helped create modern UFO mythology.
And sometimes that's the real historical lesson. The myth can become as influential as the event that started it.
Well said. Roswell is where debris in the desert met the American imagination, and the imagination won the long game. Today's episode is sponsored by Fyrebox. That's Fyrebox. Fyrebox is the no-code quiz platform trusted by marketers, teachers, and creators around the world. Whether you want to capture leads, run an assessment, or just engage your audience with something more interesting than a contact form, Fyrebox makes it easy. Start free at fyrebox.com. Welcome back. You just heard the story. Now, let's see what stuck. Coming up, a few quick questions straight from what we just covered. 4 options each. I'll give you a few seconds to think before each answer. Ready? Here we go. Question 1. Who was the rancher that first found debris near Roswell in early July 1947? A. William Mac Brazel. B. Walter Haut. C. Kenneth Arnold. D. Colonel William Blanchard. The correct answer is A. William Mac Brazel. Question 2. What did the Roswell Army Airfield press release say on July 8, 1947? A. The base had recovered a flying disc. B. The debris was confirmed to be from Project Mogul. C. A Soviet spy balloon had been shot down. D. A meteor had landed on the ranch. The correct answer is A. The base had recovered a flying disc. Question 3. Which earlier event helped prime the public for the Roswell story by popularizing the term flying saucer? A. Kenneth Arnold's sighting near Mount Rainier. B. The first moon landing. C. The launch of Sputnik. D. The opening of Area 51. The correct answer is A. Kenneth Arnold's sighting near Mount Rainier. Question 4. What explanation is widely understood by historians and the US government to account for the Roswell debris? A. Project Mogul. B. A crashed alien spacecraft. C. A Soviet nuclear missile. D. A prototype jet engine. The correct answer is A. Project Mogul. Question 5. What did the 1994 and 1997 US Air Force reviews conclude about the Roswell incident? A. The debris was from Project Mogul, not an alien craft. B. The military had recovered live aliens. C. The incident was a hoax created by newspaper reporters. D. The debris was from a secret moon mission. The correct answer is A. The debris was from Project Mogul, not an alien craft. That's a wrap on this one. Thanks for sticking with us all the way through, quiz and all. If you liked it, hit subscribe so the next episode lands automatically. I'm Cyril, this was the Quiz Fix, and we'll be back soon with another true story worth knowing.